Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to discuss Valdo's puzzle box. This has been added to the game in patch 3.23, but it's not dropping yet. It's going to start dropping at some point, probably this week, very soon in any case. This is the spiritual successor to the Voidborn Reliquary keys that were part of the 2023 supporter packs. Now, just because you buy the top tier supporter pack this year does not give you a Valdo's puzzle box. What it lets you do is influence the pool of things that can come out of Valdo's puzzle box, which is something that will affect every player in the game. Just like the Voidborn Reliquary key last year, if you bought the top tier supporter pack last year, you didn't get the Voidborn Reliquary key, you had the same chance of getting it as someone who didn't buy that supporter pack, but you could influence what was in it for everyone. Valdo's puzzle box is very much like the Voidborn Reliquary key in that it rewards a foil unique item. But the key difference is that when you crack a Voidborn Reliquary key, you get taken to a safe treasure room, and that's where your loot is. With Valdo's puzzle box, the game makes you work for it a little bit. You're going to be put into a tier 17 map, and that tier 17 map will have mods from a different pool to what's normally available. Now, very important, one of these fundamentally breaks the rules of Path of Exile. One of these mods is that players in the area are sent to the Void League on death. The Void League is essentially a slightly harsher death penalty than what applies in Hardcore in the normal rule set. If a character dies in Hardcore, then it's moved to Standard instead, and it still remains forever playable there, but it's no longer able to be played in the league that it was originally intended for. With a Void League, the character is completely unplayable. This is going to cause huge griefing issues unless grinding your games have built in some safeties here. What I suggest they do is have it so that if you attempt to enter a portal into one of these zones, that the game asks you to type your character name before it allows you to use that portal. If grinding your games don't do this, there will be a lot of problems where people will sit in global chat channels and will ask for help. They'll say, hey, I need some help killing this map boss. All the loot's yours plus 10 chaos, or all the loot's yours plus 20 chaos. Whatever doesn't look like it's going to set off alarm bells in people. Then when the player goes through the portal, they'll find that on the other side it's been set up to be particularly lethal, maybe it's a double reflect map, and additionally it's got Void League on death. Essentially this is going to kill any party play that is not with vetted players, i.e. not organised through an external community like the Forbidden Trove Trade Discord. If it's organised through an in-game community with complete strangers, then the trolls and the griefers are going to take it over. So that really needs to be addressed before this goes live, and until you've received absolute confirmation that this has been done, you should not help strangers in Path of Exile in the foreseeable future. Otherwise, your character may end up being a trophy on some griefer's belt. Otherwise, this mod is fine when it comes to just creating a risk versus reward balance question. When players go into it completely expecting it, then they can make up their own decision whether it's worthwhile or not. Next, I want to step you through the submission process for my own Valdo's puzzle box, because that'll give you an idea as to some of the choices that you get to make along the way. Just as the first thing though, I think there are 4 main types of Valdo's puzzle boxes people will submit. The first type will be designed around making a specific reward more available. For example, someone might decide to submit Mageblood, then a whole bunch of quite manageable map modifiers to it. These ones of course will be a complete and utter jackpot to receive. The second type will be complete and utter Deathtraps, and these will probably have that Void League mechanic on them. They'll have a reward that's good enough that you're incentivized to go for them, and they'll also have a sadistic combination of modifiers applied to them. The third one will be people who submit either their own personal favourite unique, or a unique that doesn't exist in foil at the moment that they like. One of my shortlisted items that I was considering doing was Anathema, which in my mind is probably the best item that's in the base drop pool that does not currently have a foil version to it. But I've ended up deciding I'm going to go with something slightly more common, and I'm going with Berek's Respite, which doesn't currently exist in Ruby. Someone else may have already submitted a Ruby Berek's Respite, but that's my thought process for doing so. The fourth category is going to be maps where the map itself is the reward. For these ones, people are going to pick a very common unique item. You might pick something like Chevron's Pace or Goldrum that's not really a reward at all, and then all of the map mods that you select are going to be things that make that map more lucrative to run for its other rewards. Anyways, let's go through what I've chosen here. I'm going to go with Basilica map, not because it's a great map, but because it's something that's solidly in the middle, and that I figure we're not going to have a huge number of Basilica maps added. One other thing that's worth noting is that Val Temple is not an option here. And we're going to go Berek's Respite and a Ruby foiling process. Now let's go through all of the map mods. There are a lot of different options here, and some of them are in families where you can only select one option out of the family. Firstly, area contains X additional random modifiers. These will make your submission 40% more common. What does 40% more common mean, you might be asking? Well, The way that I think these are going to work, and I'm not absolutely sure that they're right, is that the relative drop rate of the item that you've chosen as your foil is going to be the starting point for the rarity of the item. For example, Berek's Respite is a tier 3 rarity unique at the moment, which makes it about 7 times as rare as Chevron's Pace, and about 12 times as common as Arakali's Fang. So by default, if the puzzle box had 3 possible maps it could generate, one was giving Berek's Respite, one was giving Chevron's Pace, and one was giving Arakali's Fang, and you open 97 of them, you could expect by default to get 1 Arakali's Fang, 12 Berek's Respite, and about 84 of Chevron's Pace. However, you can then modify them. If the person who put Chevron's Pace in put no mods on their map, and if the person who put in Arakali's Fang also put no mods, but then I put in area has 4 additional random modifiers on my Berek's Respite one, then suddenly my Berek's Respite is going to be 40% more common. So instead of there being about 12 of them in the draw, there's going to be about 16.8 of them. Now I'm not exactly sure that this 1 to 12 to 84 is exactly right, but it's the best estimate that can be made based upon the sample sizes that have been done in testing unique item tiering. So with that aside out of the way, let's go through the mods themselves. Area contains additional random modifiers, 2, 3, or 4, and the number of modifiers that you've got also modifies the chances that drop maps in the area convert into unique maps. Area contains additional packs of Restless Dead. This is one of those modifiers that is presently, to the best of my knowledge, only available on the unique map Acton's Nightmare, and this is going to make the map quite a bit more common. So this is going to create a whole bunch of packs of undead monsters that keep coming back to life if they're killed. Area contains one of the Maven's invitations. This is going to be fairly mean. This is going to be a very dangerous little trial that you've got to deal with. And in fact, I'm going to select one of these. I'm going to select Area Contains the Forgotten, mostly because the Forgotten is a fight that you don't encounter all that often. I think a lot of players will select the Feared because the Feared is just feared by people. Also, the Elder Slayers is pretty nasty as well. Probably the most rippy of these is the Elder Slayers, but the Forgotten is a fight you just don't experience very often, and that's the reason that I'm submitting it as one of my 6 mods. You'll notice that selecting one of these Maven's invitations then removes the others from the pool. Next, we have a real doozy of a danger mod. Monsters fire 6 additional projectiles. This is absolutely brutal in conjunction with a number of map bosses, and particularly with the Shaper and the Elder from the Feared. That's going to be absolutely a death trap if you were to submit this in conjunction with the Feared. Players cannot suppress spell damage is rude, and in fact it's one that I'm going to select. It's one of those mods that is pretty nasty but that doesn't affect every character in the game, and spell suppression is a really strong mechanic at the moment, so here's a map where it doesn't work. Area contains Malachai's Creeping Agony. This I'm not exactly sure what it does. Players cannot block, pretty straightforward difficulty mod. And then we have the Headhunter mod. Players gain rare monster modifiers for 20 seconds on kill. If this was 60 seconds I would have taken it, but at 20 seconds and also making the map less common, I think it's just not quite there, so I'm going to give it a miss. Areas inhabited by porcupines, ouch. Areas affected by a corrupting Tempest is something that used to be better than it is now. This has become a lot worse since Eldritch Crafting has been added to the game, and I don't think many people will pick it as a result. One of the scariest mods of all, monsters inflict Petrification for 4 seconds on hit. This is an extremely dangerous mechanic, and it's something that is going to result in a lot of rips. I think this is very frequently going to be paired with +6 projectiles and with Void League on death by people who want to make a complete and utter death trap for their submission to the puzzle box. Players cannot gain flask charges is one of the nastiest mods that you'll ever see, except if you've got a Mageblood, in which case it is pretty much a non-mod. I have a couple of little pure fun ones here. Players have increased character size or reduced character size. Then we have the 3 difficulty mods I am going to take. Monsters have maximum 9 frenzy charges and gain a frenzy charge on hit, or the same for power, or the same for endurance. I'm taking all 3 of these. I do expect them to be fairly nasty mods, fairly impactful. After this, you can add rare monster modifiers, +1, +2, or +3, and there's an escalating chance for drop maps to convert to Maven invitations with these. Then, slaying enemies in a kill streak grants Rampage bonuses. Again, like the Headhunter mod, this is something that makes the map easier, and in exchange for that ends up having slightly less commonality of the map. Non-unique equipment found in the area drops as currency instead is something that could be a very strong mod, and I expect that there'll be people who play around with this, especially if they're elected to go with a very common unique and to have a whole bunch of mechanics that make the map have a lot more normal drops than it normally would. Living weapons, not exactly sure what that's going to be. Packs of frogs is something that was introduced way back in Prophecy League. These drop a lot of loot, and from memory they also give a lot of XP. They're just basically monsters that don't fight back and are big little sacks of XP. couple of other things that modify the population of the map, but these are difficulty mods. Areas inhabited by Katava's Heralds, arguably the most dangerous of the map monster types in the game. Bone Husks is another one. Then we've got things that modify portals. Only opens 3 portals, only opens 1 portal. Area contains an additional abyss. Abysses spawn triple monsters, and you must do all of the abysses in the area to claim your reward. This is definitely going to be a mod that's found on a lot of these, and it will be done on maps where the primary reward is all of the XP that you get and all of the base items. And there's a number of other things that relate to past League mechanics as well. Area contains packs of Sulfite Golems is probably going to be one of the least used mechanics that's available, but it's something that's there that provides a whole bunch of extra delve juice, just in case you ever run out of polished Sulfite Scarabs. Area becomes increasingly lethal is probably somewhat lethal, but we don't have the exact details of it. Breaches in the area each contain a Breach Lord. Area contains 1 to 3 additional breaches, and you must successfully kill all your Breach Lords to claim your reward. This is one that's actually quite conceivably failable, especially if a Breach Lord spawns in the wrong place on the map. I think this is going to be much more commonly failed than the Abyss one is. Area contains an additional Wild, Vivid or Primal Harvest boss. This is something that I think will get chosen by a fair few people on those easier maps. Area contains packs of Untainted Wild Animals. This will be universally added to those easier maps because it's going to provide a lot of XP. Area contains Einhar Exile Hunter. This one's interesting. I don't know what Einhar Exile Hunter is going to be like, but I'm sure it's something we'll know more about once these go live in game. Players cannot evade. Monsters kill things with 20% or lower life on hit is particularly fiendish. Players in the area are 100% Delirious. Now I don't know if this is going to also have the other effects of Delirium loot-wise, but 100% Delirious is a big decrease to the amount of damage you can do to trash monsters. This is going to make it very difficult to beat things like the Abyss one or the Legion one, so do keep that in mind. Players in area are driven mad. Not sure what that's going to mean. There is a mechanic in game called Insanity, and that's something that modifies what's displayed on your screen to deviate from what's actually happening in the game. Monsters inflict debuffs, so you have Malediction, you have Grasping Vines. Monster corpses cannot be destroyed is particularly fiendish. Debuffs on players expire 50% slower is somewhat of a build destroyer for some people, but is probably not going to be a factor for most people. And then we have something that looks like it's a reverse of Rampage, where players gain instability on kill and unstable players eventually detonate. I don't know exactly what that's going to mean in practice. I'm assuming that it is just simply the reverse of Rampage though. If you reach maybe a Rampage streak of 250, maybe then you go kaboom. We have an Alva mod that requires you to go into incursion temples. This will be interesting in that it's going to potentially make you have access to a tier 17 Alva temple, which will then have a lot more chance to drop item level 86 fractured rare items in it. That's something that could be potentially worth investigating. You can get that already in conjunction with the Temple Nexus room, but the Temple Nexus room is fairly low on most people's priority list when they're trying to make a temple, and this is going to be something that will make it a lot easier to source these. Very savage movement debuff here. Players have 50% reduced movement speed and cannot use travel skills. I think this is going to be one of those map mods that you probably only want to do if you already have a Mageblood. We have a Torment theme mod. Then we have 2 that modify the way loot and XP work. Monsters drop no items, plus 24% pack size, or players gain no experience, but plus 58% item quantity. I can see both of these being used, albeit probably not simultaneously to each other, except if someone decides to be a bit of a troll there. Area contains 3 gigantic rogue exiles, not sure how dangerous those are going to be. We have some torment mods here that are pretty dangerous. Rare and unique monsters in the area are possessed by 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 tormented spirits, and their minions are touched. This last one here is going to be an absolute death trap. Having monsters that are multi-ghosted, they're already really dangerous. Having them surrounded by a pack of touched minions is worse, and particularly with any encounter where there's multiple unique monsters in one zone, this is going to be a wrecking ball. If I wanted to turn my map into a death trap, then I would have the Forgotten on it, but I would also have this there, so that the unique monsters are multi-ghosted as well. That would become a complete and utter death trap zone. I'm not going for a death trap though, so I'm not going to use that one. Monsters have a chance to have a volatile core. I'm not actually sure what these are. Players are assaulted by apparitions of various bosses. Baran, Drox, Veritania, Elhesman, Cyrus Awakener of Worlds, the Shaper, the Eldar, Atzari, and many dangerous apparitions. Many dangerous apparitions was actually on my shortlist of mods to use, And if I was trying to make something really dangerous, I would probably remove one of the other mechanics from mine and then add this on. Next we have a Legion encounter, we have a Beyond encounter, and then we have possibly the scariest mod of all other than the Void League one. Players deal 10% less damage per equipped item, as do player minions. This one is really, really dangerous, especially in conjunction with the area is 100% Delirious. This is going to create a situation where you're doing so much less damage that you run a very real risk of getting overwhelmed. Next we have areas infested with maddening tentacles. Not exactly sure what this is going to do. And Union of Souls. Now Union of Souls is a mechanic that's existed before, but has only existed for packs of monsters. The way it worked was that whenever you killed one member of that pack, and it would always be a pack of magic monsters, all the rest of them would get a permanent buff out of it. Now I'm not sure how much this Union of Souls mechanic is shared throughout the entire map. The fact that Grinding Gear games have attached it to 100% more common is something that makes me feel it could be quite dangerous. Players have Shroudwalker is one of the most annoying mechanics you'll ever encounter. Shroudwalker is the drawback to Headhunter. This is the thing that makes you uncontrollably teleport, and it is really, really, really irritating to get this. It does, I think, blind enemies that are near you or do something else like that, so it has an upside as well, but generally speaking, you never want Shroudwalker on, and this is going to be a really frustrating mod to deal with. A number of other environmental dangers are here. Players are randomly targeted by meteors, area becomes fatal after some time, which is the text of Ober's Cursed Trove, portals to the area close over time, and then portals to the area only close when players die, so you can go in and out as many times as you want, as long as you're not actually dying in there. Players have 10% increased cost of skills for each skill they've used recently is terrifying. This is something that most builds are not going to be capable of doing, unless they really, really build around it. Area contains many detonation totems is going to result in many, many deaths, and is most likely going to be paired very often with players sent to the Void League on death. Rare monsters have a 20% chance to spawn a duplicate of map boss on death. I'm assuming that this pulls from the entire pool of potential map bosses, although I'm not absolutely certain on this. This one is going to be very dangerous as well, because you're going to kill a monster and then get surprised sometimes. Most of the time it won't be Rigwold, most of the time it won't be Innocence, but there'll be times that someone's going to spawn that has a really, really dangerous individual move, and that's going to end up being a Wrecking Ball. Basically every map boss that is dangerous in the Maven fight is going to be really dangerous here. The Goddess of Justice comes to mind as another map boss that will be really terrifying to have just pop in and say hello. We have a Strongbox themed one. We have double reflect here. Monsters reflect 100% physical and elemental damage. That basically means if you're not immune to those reflect types, you can't run them out. Monsters enraged on low life. Players who die in the area are sent to the Void. We've had a bit of discussion around that already. As long as Grinding Gear games set it up so that you can't enter this map without being made aware of it, then that's going to be fine. It's going to be a risk versus reward thing that most players are going to say no to, but some people are going to say yes to. But there's going to be a lot of problems for this to be misused. Players have 100% reduced effective non-curse auras from skills. Note that that's reduced, so it stacks additively with all of your passive tree effects. It doesn't just turn off all auras. This is going to be much easier to manage on a mana build than pretty much anything else. Areas contain guarded smugglers' caches, and all smugglers' caches must be opened in order to claim your reward. Area contains enemies of all influence types. Players reflect melee damage that they take, so this is going to result in players having a massive amount of thorns. Players deal 500% increased damage while dead. I'm sure this is going to get paired with dead players go to the Void. I'm sure that's going to get done by someone because it's completely useless. Area contains roaming hex fields. I'm assuming that this is patches of cursed ground that move around and that you can try to dodge or you can just try to endure them. Area contains Cyrus's deatomization storms. These things are deadly and these things are huge. These are going to be really annoying and this is going to slow down your mapping a lot. A lot. There's an expedition mod. The Maven interferes with players. We don't know how much he interferes. Area contains 5 additional rare monsters that generate frost walls and then flee. So one of those really annoying mods that's very, very rare in normal gameplay. You're going to be able to force them onto your map, although it doesn't look like players are going to be forced to kill those mods. When hit, players gain a random movement speed modifier from 50% less to 50% more until hit again. This is going to feel really bad to play with. And it's going to be something that's going to disproportionately affect the most skilled players. One thing you'll notice if you watch players who are far better than me, whether it be the very best 2 players of the game, Ben and I'm Exile, or whether it be the sort of second tier of extremely good players who are not that far behind them, you'll notice that they have very precise movement. This is one of their biggest skills that they've got in the game, and they're going to lose that precision when they've got this map mod in play. That map mod is going to be really, really dangerous, and it'll probably be found on a lot of the Deathtrap designs. We have one of two ultimatum themed ones here, and this one's not really clarified exactly how it works. Players are assaulted by ruinous ghosts, which are an ultimatum themed monster, and the area has no chance to contain ultimatum encounters. Now, ruin is a mechanic in ultimatum where if it stacks to 7 you fail the ultimatum, and this might be set up in a somewhat similar way. We'll have to see how that plays out. Unique monsters have 2 random shrine buffs is absolutely lethal, especially if you have it in conjunction with something like the area contains the feared. Area contains really dangerous ritual altars. This one's interesting in that this is going to return item level 84 ritual bases to the game. Not returning item level 85 ones, but it is going to return item level 84 ones. They're not currently available. They were available in the past, they're not now, and they'll be available again. Area contains an Uber Blight. Rare monsters have Essence effects. Area contains an Uber Ultimatum. And then we have one of the most dangerous of all the mods. Monsters can only be damaged when within 2 meters of a player. Player modifiers to light radius also apply to this range. Next we have maximum number of players in the area is 1. And finally, area contains an additional Regal Harbinger. Now I've already decided my 5th and final mod is going to be area contains 10 additional guarded exquisite Vaal vessels. Not exactly sure if these are going to be exactly the same as the ones found in Vaal Temple. They don't have exactly the same name, but let's find out by putting them in. Because everything on my mod selections is making it more common, and because I've started with a tier 3 rarity unique rather than something much rarer, I do think there's a reasonable chance that mine will get pulled by a fair few people this week. Now, this all multiplies together to make my map 2,526% more common than it otherwise would be. So if the base drop rate of a Berek's Respite is 300, then this is going to increase that to 7,878. On the flip side, if someone had chosen all the worst difficulty mods, they could potentially have double, 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 double and a quarter. And if someone did all of that, they'd be looking at 7,100% more common. And they might have started with a unique that's about 7 times as common. And in that case, their map is going to appear about 20 times as often out of Valdo's puzzle box as mine is going to. The final thing that you can add to this is a piece of customization. This is just a message that will display not burnt into the item itself, but instead it'll be a message that is displayed when the item is collected. People submitted a whole bunch of different things into the Voidborn Reliquary, and I expect this will be similar. Some people put in lore appropriate comments, some people put in a personal note, and some people put in memes. I'm going for something that's on the lower end of the meme scale, with a simple note: this ring is engraved with a majestic toucan, and the words, "Fire is like love, best when shared," which of course is thematically appropriate to Berek's Respite. The final thing that might puzzle you is this preview mode standard versus preview mode ruthless, and if you're in ruthless mode, then you'll see that some of the numerical aspects of these map mods, not the difficulty component but the bonus component, some of those are toned down. For example, players cannot suppress spell damage, chance for drop maps to convert to charge compass 4%, 11% pack size. If we change that over to ruthless, then instead of 11% pack size, that gets nerfed down to 7% quantity. And it's similar for all of the other mods. Anyways, that's the entire process. I'm going to submit now, and then I'm likely to receive a message if it's been approved, but ultimately GGG do have veto power over them. For example, if I put in something that was profanity laced, or if I put in something that was copyrighted song lyrics, then they'd reject that. They may also reject things that are completely lore inappropriate, so we'll see how the toucan reference goes. There is an ultimatum pet that is a toucan, so I think it's probably likely to go. Anyways, that's the process. I'm going to leave it there. May your Valdo's puzzle boxes contain interesting death traps.